How's it going? Welcome back to the Drone Camps channel. If you enjoy freedom, truth, and the right to fly your drone, make sure that you click subscribe and the like button on this channel, in this video specifically, because the YouTube algorithm, as we know, likes to suppress FPV drone videos and firearm videos these days because of things like the Ukraine and other conflicts around the world. So today, my friend, we're gonna get into looking at some of the newest, latest and greatest FPV drone components and accessories that came out, and also some of the cool releases that we've talked about here on this channel, previous reviews in the past 30 days. So kick back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and let's get into what's new for July 2024. Now, one of the most interesting releases that we've seen in the past month in the FPV community is Flyws' release of the X30. It is kind of an invisible conformal coating type of spray bottle that can spray onto your flight controller and give it pretty much 100% waterproof capabilities. You don't really want to just dunk this in a lake, a river, or an ocean after you've coated it. But if you are flying with this, it's likely that you're not going to have water droplet on your flight controller and cause a brownout or a system failure. I know sometimes when people are flying in fog, that can also affect a flight controller. Any tiny little droplet of water on any of these circuits can cause a short circuit. So, and the puff of white smoke that we all kind of never want to see. So white smoke leads to fire, and fire leads to a crash drone. So it's important to protect your flight controllers and even your ESCs from any type of moisture that the air can put onto your flight controllers. So if you live in more humid environments, or you live in a place where it rains a lot, like we do out in the Pacific Northwest, just landing in the wet grass can ruin a drone. I've fried many flight controllers with just landing in a little bit of wet grass. You know, water droplet bounces up on the flight controller and it's done. So this stuff is around $25 on their website. It does say water resistance, so I don't, they're not claiming that it's waterproofing anything really, but it is in a little spray bottle. It comes pretty much like this. It's nothing fancy, little black bottle, spray on the top. And what I recommend is when you go to do this, if this is your first time ever working with any type of conformal coating, you want to go ahead and make sure you blow all the dust off of your board first with some type of like compressed air or something like that. And once you get all the dust off of it and you know it's completely clean, then you can go ahead and spray on a good layer of this coating on top of the bottom and the top of the flight controller. And the same thing with your ESCs. You want to be careful not to get it inside the harnesses here, so maybe spray it directly from the top and flip it over and spray it directly from the top from this side, and just kind of visually inspect some of your cable harnesses around the side to make sure you didn't cover some of those, because that would not be good if you got them on the pins inside. One of the things you can do to avoid that, just go ahead and put the wire harnesses inside these harnesses and cover them up when you do spray these flight controllers, and also the same harness on your ESCs. Now when you go to solder things up, what's going to happen is your soldering iron is going to melt through that conformal coating, and then you're going to make contact with these tabs. And after that, once you have things soldered down to your motor, soldered to these tabs, go ahead and give it another spray over top just to give it another coating once you've removed it. That way you don't get moisture down to the connection on your ESC tabs. And the same thing for the top of the flight controller. But again, you can find the link to the Flyws X30 compound in the video description link. If you want to try some out for yourself, it's $25. And again, like, affiliate links help support the channel. Joshua Bardwell uses them, I use them, and it keeps this channel going. So if you want to use my link, I would definitely appreciate that. That would definitely help me out. Let's go ahead and check out what's next. Up next is something new from Foxeer. This is the Foxeer Stack F45 Reaper 55 amp ESCs, everything in one box. It is about $71 for the ESCs and the flight controller, it will run up to an 8S configuration battery. These are the 55 amp 4-in-1 ESCs, and it looks like they already have some bit of conformal coating over them, so that's kind of nice from the factory. Gap RC also does that. Underneath the ESCs, we have the flight controller itself, and it has solder points on there, as well as some harnesses around there for a no solder type of setup if you're doing that kind of build. And on the bottom, you can see the solder tabs. Also inside the box, you get this tiny little box, and inside here is all the wires, the harnesses, and the accessories. And I like it that it comes with a VBAC cable for your battery. This is kind of nice. I haven't seen some of the flight controllers recently and ESC setups come with an XT60, and it looks like some around 10 gauge wire. And these are all of your component harnesses and cables. They're all ready to go right there with the JSTs. So you're just going to plug those into the outside of the flight controller edges. And this is your hardware pack for mounting it, as well as a capacitor inside there. Now, while I do see some of the different hardware in here, as well as the ESC harness right there, I see grommets, but I don't see any screws, particularly in this box. Maybe I set them to the side, but it should come with some M3 screws, which will go up through the bottom of the quad. And the F45 on the scale weighs 8.5 grams. The Reaper 55 amp ESCs weigh in at 16.4 grams, and both together they come in at 24.9 grams total weight. And just to give you a little overview of this flight controller, it's looking pretty good, and I don't really see a whole lot of difference between flight performance from an F4 to an F7, if I'm to be honest. You know, the idea that F7 is quicker and more responsive, handles more vibrations in the tune, things like that. It is also more sensitive, so it's also kind of a crux there. And I don't know if even some of the top pilots could tell the difference between an F7 flight controller and an F4. So let's go ahead and take a look at this if you're kind of new and you're wondering, should I get an F4 or F7? Now, over on this side right here, we have the DJI HD FPV VTX harness right here, plugs right into your O3. We also have buzzer and RX connections over on this rail over here for Crossfire or ELRS. Over here we have the Foxeer ESC cable harness right here. It kind of comes up from there, and this is the pack that I showed you where that harness is, as well as camera 1 and camera 2 switching harness right here, which is also super great. So if you're setting this up for long range, if you want to put this even on a plane or something like that, this will handle ArduPilot. So you can install ArduPilot on this flight controller. It accepts Betaflight and ArduPilot. Down at the bottom, we have an input port for the VTX. This is an analog input right here. And over to the next one, this one is your GPS input. And on the bottom, we have all kinds of different tabs here for extra additional accessories if you want to add it onto this flight controller. What is neat is that this particular flight controller can handle up to 8 motors. It does have an X8 support, which means if you're going to build a giant octocopter with this flight controller, you can do that for more industrial purposes. It also has a built-in barometer and PWM function, which is pretty needed for most aircraft these days. It also comes with 64 megabytes of black box data, which is great, and 6 UARTs on this flight controller. So I think it's pretty cool. For around $71, you can get something that will power up to an 8S battery, whether it's a fixed wing aircraft or a quadcopter or even an octocopter. It seems like it's a pretty compact flight controller with a 30x30 setup for such a large scale aircraft. It definitely comes with power in mind, and I love the fact that it does have switchable dual camera options, which some flight controllers out there don't have, and that comes in handy if you're flying long range FPV. And oh yeah, speaking of long range FPV, this is the HDLC Zeus VTX. It's running up to 2.5 watt. Most of you guys have not flown as far as 2.5 watt will take you with a quadcopter. So this particular VTX, it's $55, and it will pretty much, you'll probably run out of battery before you ever outrun the range on this particular VTX. Now, video transmission systems can become blocked by objects and fixed objects that are in the landscape. But if you're flying long range and you're flying higher as you go and you have a true line of sight between your aircraft and your ground station, if you're flying long range, this is going to give you a solid out for 10 miles plus easily with this type of setup. So, and again, $55. It comes with one of these, which I love. It does have an MMCX connector, which is way more reliable for long range type of applications. It snaps on the end of the VTX itself. It doesn't have a physical fan built into this, but it does have a pretty beastie heat sink. So it would be nice if you could use this with some type of physical fan. If you're running over 2 watt, you better have a nice mount system on your fixed wing or your multi-rotor, because there's going to be a lot of heat coming off of this, and it will literally melt plastic. If you have it on certain types of plastic, you have to watch out for super high temps of some of these VTXs. It does come with a couple different harnesses inside here. It has also some power outputs if you need to power out any other accessories. And if we take a look at the side of it right here, it does have a few different LEDs right in the middle. You can see power here, the channel, and the band, and it also has 2 extra buttons for physically changing the band and the channel, as well as the power output. So if you hold and long press, you'll be able to change the bands. If you short press, you'll be able to change the channels, and you'll see that inside your goggles. If you long press for more than 5 seconds, you can be able to change the power, and this LED will change colors, letting you know that you're changing power. You can also go inside your goggles and change the power from your goggles as well with smart audio. And the power on the Zeus is running from pit mode, which is a mode where you can kind of turn it down so you don't blast the guys sitting next to you. Most people in FPV racing use pit mode, so that comes in handy if you're flying next to other folks. It does have a voltage range from 7 to 26 volt, from 2 to 6S, which is kind of nice. So if you needed to directly plug this into your VBAT, which you probably never would, but you have that option to do that on most drones out there, because no one's really running more than 6S. So the power output option is kind of nice. So you can also do 25 milliwatt, you can do 200, 800, 1600, and 2.5 watt for the total video power. So this one also came with a dipole antenna, which if you're going to be running more than 2 watt, you probably shouldn't use this anyway. You should probably use some type of right-hand circular polarized antenna there that can give you long range. I recommend the Lumineer dual 5.8 antennas. Those are great. And here are some stickers as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add an HDLC sticker to our build mat right there. And again, you can find the link for this one down in the video description. The Zeus with the MMCX connector on here for the extension for your antenna is 24.7 grams. Now I get to talk about probably my favorite subject of this FPV newscast, the new tiny whoops that have come out in the last 30 days. It seems like all of these companies have been on the R&D to build you a brand new ready to fly style tiny whoop, also giving you options for bind and flies from Beta FPV. HDLC has the brand new Petrol 85 ready to fly kit, which is a powerhouse on 2S. It is also classified as a whoop. It does have prop guards, but it flies more like a micro brushless freestyle quad, which is amazing. So for beginners who want to do something a little more than just kind of fly around the house and fly super stable and slow, this one will fly slow and fast, and it will freestyle. The Newbie Drone VR drone is a more compact type of setup. It has the goggles that have the drone inside the goggles and comes with a smaller transmitter, which I do prefer HDLC's transmitter, which is an ELRS transmitter, versus this version of this one. It feels more like a real transmitter than the VR drone one does. And I'll just show you that one. I've done a full review on this particular transmitter before, because we had a release on this one, I guess earlier this year in 2024, and it does have 2 full-size 18650s, and it has these full-size gimbals on here. So this one feels more like my larger style FPV remotes. So this is, and again, this one's updatable with ELRS. You can fly on simulators, and this one also comes with an FPV dongle for wireless FPV simulator on your computer, which is freaking great. As far as, you know, something with room to grow, the HDLC Petrol was probably my first choice for room to grow. Now, for people that are already into FPV, and if you're someone like me who's been flying for 10 years plus, the Air series, even for beginners, if you started out here, you may crash a lot, but I have to tell you, this particular drone right here is hands down the most durable drone that I have, tiny whoop drone that I've flown so far in my career, and it only weighs 17 grams as well. So that contributes to how tough this is. And I was talking to some people the other day about my experiences with the Air series, and one of my biggest takeaways from this drone, and it's just a thing with tiny whoops, when you crash, the props fly off all the time because they're push-on props. And sometimes the manufacturing doesn't get it quite tight enough on the shaft, and you're constantly taking your thumb, pushing them back down. Some of you guys that fly know what I'm talking about, but I didn't lose a single prop in all of my testing with the freestyle one here and the racing one. And they're offering these in two different versions. The freestyle one has a little less kV on the motors. These are the 07 series motors, and they're like 23,000 kV, whereas the race one has a more aggressive prop. It's a thicker width, and it has 27,000 kV. So higher kV. It is also much faster around the yard. And this one, again, I want to try out the racing props on this one because I feel like I could have a little more power coming around, a little more lift coming around from those big freestyle maneuvers, where typically a thinner style prop will bottom out and you hit the ground. So just a little thicker cord in this prop may actually make this one survive some of the maneuvers that I was trying to do with it. But I love this series for the more experienced pilots that know how to bind up ELRS to your radio. You could even fly these Air series on this HDLC remote, and that is a pretty cool release for the last month in the FPV community. They also released some new batteries, and they're the Lava 260 milliamp batteries and the 300 milliamps battery packs. They come in these 5 packs, and you can get those on the website and my links down below. But again, like newbie drone, if you're looking for like kind of an all-in-one package, this comes off for a monitor. Unfortunately, no spot in the bottom for a tripod mount, but you could prop it up on the counter, and then you have a place to keep a lot of batteries, up to 12 batteries inside there, and it has a built-in charger inside the goggles. So drone storage, battery storage, and a built-in charger inside that. As far as the flight characteristics of this one, it's pretty fast around the house and outside in the backyard. As you can see in my review, you can watch the full review on this one to see how it flew. But this one's my most recommended, just straight up 0 to hero beginner type of set for the newbie drone, VR drone. It's cool. So beginners, room to grow, and more experienced pilots, you will love the Air series. Chris Rosser and some other folks have been raving on the Beta FPV Air series. And again, you can find all the links down below for these, and I will label them as such, which we talked about just now. So that's it for today's show and tell for FPV news and what's new. Please do subscribe on the channel because I have a ton of new stuff coming, new drones, airplanes, RC helicopters, and some super cool FMS RC cars on the channel as well, and occasionally some e-bikes and things like that. But I want to say a special thank you for your support in the last 30 days. The channel analytics are way up, and more drone news and things like that are coming down the pipe on the channel. So be sure, again, to subscribe like you already have. And again, thank you just so much for the support, the feedback, the comments, and the new Patreons on the channel as well. We've got a ton of new Patreons. We're probably the most underpaid Patreon on Patreon, but maybe we'll get up above the $500 mark at some point. But I want to say thank you to the new Patreons that jumped on this past few weeks. So thank you so much. It really does help, and affiliate links really help keep these types of channels going. So if you support this type of channel, please use our links or become a Patreon. Either way, I'm here for you for the past 10 years and still going. Like I say on the channel, never give up. And again, like, thank you so much for your support and everything you've done for me. Thank you so much. I will see you on the next one.